Hello, my dear folks. Welcome to the show. My name is Jack Xiao. I'm hosting this East-West show with a lot of pride. And we try very hard to bring information to you. To be honest, we're not chasing about news because whatever on my mouth happens to be on my lips kind of obsolete. So what do make sense are the facts, are the thoughts that you always want to think about after some instant, so that you may take that opportunity as a chance of learning. So we're doing it now. With the case of Peter Liang, we know that he was convicted. We know that the sentencing will come on April the 14th, is one day before the tax day. All right, one way to pay tax though. And we want to find out what exactly is happening or has been happening from the point when he was convicted to the future sentencing. There is something. So today joining me are my two wonderful friends. They're kind of my backbone friends. Oh, I know this gentleman 20 something years at least.
20 plus years, definitely.
20 plus years.
Yes.
And his name is Scott Womath. He is attorney at law, servicing Southern California for over 30 years.
Correct.
Am I right?
That's right.
And you have a big billboard over there. And then in San Gabriel, in Hacienda High.
Oh,
no,
yes.
Diamond Bar or something.
You know, they change around.
They change it around, right?
So
well, anyway.
we never know from 1 month
You're
to
a big
the next.
shot. you're a big shot.
Hey, I'm sitting with big shots.
Sure, all right, thank you very much. How about we're all big? And his partner, Mr. Justin Rodriguez. As you can see, all right. As you can see, a handsome young man with, what we say, a knowledge as rich as the same height of where you stand.
Okay,
Something like
that's
that.
a good thing.
Okay, to both of you, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jack.
very much.
Okay, and don't laugh too early because my questions are kind of like will give you some hard time, right? So
Well, it's
be
a serious
prepared.
subject, yeah,
Right,
of
good,
course.
good.
Yeah.
And of course, for the purpose of educating our audiences, of bringing knowledge to imbue our life with a positive information, we need to do that. Right?
Yes.
Okay, now here. The Brooklyn District Attorney's Office announced on Wednesday, which was 2 days ago, that it would not seek prison time for former New York police officer Peter Liang. And he recommended that, the office recommended that it go low key on that and no incarceration necessary for this guy, for Officer Peter Liang. I would like to hear your comment, please, about that. Namely, he wrote a recommendation saying that, well, let's do this, not that, right? So you want to start? You want to start first?
Well, I know Justin is in court every day in criminal court, and he
Not today.
kind of see,
Not
today.
today,
Not
yeah,
today.
for sure.
not yet.
Very
Yeah,
good.
yeah, exactly.
But you know, he sees this day in and day out. So I'm like you, an observer of what happens. Of course, a prosecutor has discretion as to what they're going to seek or recommend, and a judge makes the final decision. There's obviously going to be more input than just what the prosecutor says, but I'll defer to
Yeah,
James,
I
your
think
take on that,
Scott's absolutely correct that this recommendation by the prosecutor is really just that. It's a recommendation. At the end of the day, the judge will make the final determination of what this particular individual will serve, if anything, as a punishment. So there are these kinds of recommendations. I think the prosecutor does it for several reasons, and or if I just in my experience, number one, because he's prosecuting a police officer, that's his way of kind of showing some allegiance or trying to show some leniency on this particular officer, because it's something that the prosecutors work with the police officers every day. They're
not in this
essentially on the
case.
same team.
Not in this case.
Well, with this recommendation,
Yeah.
it would suggest that there is some leniency that is being sought after.
I see.
And also, I think he's doing it to try to show that there might have been some mitigating circumstances where he believes that this particular officer shouldn't do the time that maybe a normal individual like you or I.
You mean jail
would serve.
time?
Jail time. At the end of the day, though, the judge will go with his own decision. Doesn't necessarily have to follow the recommendation, but it does allow for the judge a lot more flexibility to consider those alternative sentences, like the home detention and things like that, when the prosecutor makes that recommendation.
I see.
So it's only
And
time will
Scott,
tell.
Yeah.
I know that you've been servicing this community for more than 30 years, and the court
Right.
experience-wise, everything. How much do you think that would play in the consideration of a judge? And he mentioned, of course, that allows the judge a room of swing back and forth or left or right.
Right.
How big is the case that the judge will consider that?
Yeah, I would think the judge will consider it very strongly, because what the prosecutor has to say, does reflect some serious thought and consideration that's been given to the case. The prosecutor, filed the action, so. Yeah, I think the judge has to consider how they feel about it. But I think you raised a real good point there when you said, well, not in this case, the prosecution didn't work with the police. But I think in terms of education, as you mentioned, what is the process? Because, of course, they would have had to work very closely with the police because this was a crime that was charged against a police officer. But at the very beginning, the investigation was done by prosecutors with the help of police, wasn't that?
Yeah.
And that's, I think,
That's a very good point.
that's,
Yeah.
excellent point, and I think that's why there's so much debate and so many different groups, advocacy groups, attorneys in general, especially criminal defense attorneys, find so much difficulty when they look at a case like this and see kind of the prosecutor and police working hand in hand. It suggests at least some sort of possible conflict of interest because you have two groups where the prosecutor is supposed to be prosecuting this particular group, but then are relying on them for investigative purposes. So it's really something where you'll see there's a lot of debate, there's a lot of attorneys pushing for the prosecutor to have a special kind of its own separate department that is separate from the police, and independent to the investigation, to be able to act independently and not
Thank
have
you
that
very
kind
much
of
for
conflict.
that, because as Scott pointed out, there is something very strange. It's not normally on a day-to-day basis, right? On a day-to-day basis, it's kind of like in between the prosecution and the police department as defendant.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
you find them sitting on the same bench. That's the
Yeah.
problem. And that's exactly my second question. It says here, why would that happen? And that must be something there leading to it. I'm talking about question number 3. The killing of Mr. Gurley came barely for 4 months after Garner, right, died in a confrontation with a police officer in Staten Island. And would that bring the pressure to the prosecution? Okay, let's do something, because the former was released, walk out as a free man, was not charged, of course, let alone convicted, and let's do something. Could that be an input to the prosecution?
Well, I think at the very least it would be a situation where they want to make sure they're looking at it very thoroughly and very clearly, just in light of what at that time had been a series of well-publicized events. And so, they could not just dismiss it, sweep it under the rug, right? They, at the very least, needed to look at it very, very carefully. Whether the ultimate decision was revenge or or justice. I'm not sure, but it's a very very good question. What kind of effect? And look, prosecutors are people too, right? They're subject to the same influences.
They're human.
And
Yeah.
Right. What is happening in society and pressure. I mean, they
Exactly,
should be
Justin.
separate
I just
from
want to
it,
find out if with the pressure, everything, they would say, hey, for the first one, we let him go, and this one, no. Otherwise, the public would get crazy.
I think it would be naive to suggest that every particular case happens in a bubble, right? I mean, on this particular case, it's always important to consider the context of what's happening not only inside the courtroom but outside the courtroom. And why? Well, that's going to have influence on the prosecutor, how aggressively they may go after the case.
All right, yes.
It may have an influence on the judge from kind of the public and the scrutiny that the case is going to be getting.
Right.
And I think almost most importantly, it's going to affect the jurors, because don't forget, the jury is going to be deciding this case. They're well aware of the climate and of what's going on with these this particular police department. So in one way or another, whether people will admit it or not, what's going on outside the courtroom has an effect on what's going on inside the courtroom.
Very good, very good. All right, my dear audience, today we're trying to get into the more profound layer of the case of Peter Liang, try to learn something. And with us are our wonderful friend, Scott Wormers, an attorney at law servicing Southern California for more than 30 years, and his partner, Justin Rodriguez, and his attorney that goes to court. Did he cover you? You're traveling, whatever, going back and forth?
Oh, we'll talk about that later, Jack.
All right, good.
Maybe you're his agent.
Okay, very good.
I need a manager. I need an agent, Jack.
I need a manager. I can manage you. Let's take a short moment now. When we come back, we'll exactly find out the kind of like leniency versus the aggressiveness. So I see a before and after. I don't know if I'm right. So stay with us. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to the show. Jack Xiao hosting on the East-West show with G&E TV. Now, when I say the word action, I feel kind of like stronger on my back because I have these two backbone friends here to support Mr. Scott Wormuth of Scott Wormuth Law Firm. Your name is there, right?
You're right.
So, because I should give the credit to you, both you and your firm.
Oh,
right?
thank
The
you.
firm of law firm of Scott Wormuth and his partner, Mr. Justin Rodriguez. They are my backbone friends, especially when I have a crying baby like this.
Yeah.
They are the mothers. All right, good. Okay, now mothers, attention, please.
Nurse your
Question, right? At the very beginning, the way Mr. Peter Liang was charged, and some of the dialogue, the conversation in court, going back and forth that I heard a part of, and I see a word, aggressiveness, very aggressive, right? Now, the way this prosecution, this attorney's office, represented by Mr. Thomas, what kind of a leniency, quote unquote, from his word, in between you see a before and after. Why is that, please? Is that normal?
Well, of course, if they've made the decision to prosecute, they have to go all out, right? They can't lose. It's not good for the office. It's not good for them to choose a case that they think they might lose, right? So they have to make sure they've got everything in order, and they're going to be aggressive and relentless in getting a conviction. That's what they're supposed to do.
All right.
Now, what happens after the fact? Okay, so they got their conviction. Now they look at it from a different perspective. It's a different issue now. Sentencing is different than convicting. So Justin is in criminal law day in and day out.
Not
So
you're a
what's your
criminal.
take?
No, you're in the criminal law.
Yeah,
All
not
right,
criminal.
good. Okay. Okay. And what do you want to say?
Well, I think Scott raises the perfect point, is that I feel the prosecutor in this particular instance, it was a way for them to kind of reach a happy balance. On one hand, like Scott mentioned, they got their conviction. I mean, they pressed hard on the case. They went through the whole trial, and the jury found him guilty. On the other hand, now they have the sentencing aspect, which is a way to kind of balance the two, because essentially the prosecutor's in the middle. They have to fulfill their duty of bringing about the charges that were committed. That's their duty as a prosecutor to the people of New York. On the other hand, they work day in and day out with the police. They rely on the police to prosecute their cases. The primary,
That's a strange part.
the primary witnesses for prosecution, 99.99% of their cases are police officers. So they can't entirely badger and just belittle and beat up the police officers that they come to rely on every day to prosecute their cases. So I think it was a way of them splitting the baby, so to speak, where they got their conviction but yet went light on the sentencing. Again, that's going to be up to the judge at the end of the day, so it's a way for them to kind of wash their hands and say, it's up to you, Your Honor, you make the call.
Are you saying that they try to be as aggressive as possible in conviction, and afterwards they're pacifying the whole group?
A cynical person could say that. I mean, it's...
I know you're a writer also, right? How do you want to vividly describe the situation? I see inconsistency. That's what I feel about. If I were Peter Liang, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I would say, I would congratulate the prosecutor for being sensitive about the situation. I mean, you can look at it that way too.
All right, okay. I see what you mean.
I mean,
at least they thought of something, right?
Yeah.
At least they did this, yeah.
Right. So, we were talking a little bit about what are some of the external forces here. The police union supported the prosecution of this officer.
Yes.
Which to me is pretty
strange.
Yeah.
Strange, yes.
Yeah, pretty remarkable.
And
right?
his partner, the comrade, who covers his back and whose back is covered by him, well, is of course an informant on the prosecution side. In other words, you're talking about a situation, the guy in the middle with everybody going against him. That's the situation he was. And now it turns out way back, say, hey, let's be easy on this guy. He's a nice guy. Here's here's
very difficult, sort of unavoidable conflict of interest here in a lot of ways.
Hey, you're in court in now every single day. So do you see this quite often?
I do. Actually,
You do?
I have to say that. And you don't see it actually quite enough, to be honest. It is a rare instance where the prosecutor is willing to admit or to bring up issues that show or can tend to show that the punishment shouldn't be as severe as possible for this particular individual. He brought up good points, and I think there are points worth raising, that this was essentially an accident. It was a shot that got fired.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Then the word accident exactly offsets the conviction. At the conviction, no, he shot purposely. And that was the strong word, that was the weapon the prosecution held on him, saying that you shot the person purposely and you excuse yourself that was an accident. Now it turns back to themselves. They say, oh, let's excuse him, that's an accident. How do you interpret the situation? Yes.
Important to know what was the charge and what was the conviction.
No.
And what did they have to prove?
Right.
Second degree manslaughter.
And then that's where it all comes down to. Manslaughter is mitigated murder, meaning that there was some excuse or there was some defense to bring this down from a charge of murder, which is the most serious charge you can get for the killing of another human being, down to manslaughter, which is less serious and carries with it much less severe punishment. So the mere fact that the bullet that was fired and the ultimate shot was done with a ricochet, it bounced off a concrete wall.
Yeah.
That is a mitigating factor. I'm not saying it absolves this person for what they've been charged with, but it is something to consider. There is something different from seeing a person and shooting right at them and having that intent versus carelessly or recklessly, even criminally negligent fashion, shooting and a bullet bouncing off a wall. There's something to be said for that.
And also, I mean, okay, here, let's hear. He wrote, the district attorney office representative, Mr. Thomas, says that, for example, Mr. Liang was a rookie officer who had guaranteed from the police, who has graduated from the police academy only a year before, that the stairwell that he was patrolling was dark, and that he had chosen to put himself, his own life, on the line as a police officer. Those kind words, those kind of clemency words, though, all in favor of Peter Liang, exactly goes the opposite, saying, and this very attorney, district attorney, says exactly, purposely, you will fire the shot at this person. So they offset each other. That's the problem.
Well, I don't know. Let's look at another kind of manslaughter. Okay, this was manslaughter. Let's look at a vehicle. You're driving your car. You're driving your car, and you, to a criminal extent of negligence. You don't see what's going on in front of you, and you run over a person.
Negligence,
right?
negligence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's more than negligence, though. So it would be at the level of manslaughter. What do you have to prove in vehicular manslaughter? So you're driving a car. And
they use the word criminally negligent, that you had a duty to drive safe, as everyone does, but you breached that duty.
You were speeding, you were reckless, whatever. So this brings it up, okay?
Okay, so, now, yeah, good.
Well, I just want to say at this point, you did the act. So there's no question you did the act. But do you want to take into consideration that the driver may have had an excellent community history working with, you know, these are kind of what the considerations.
That's exactly right.
That
to be easy on him, right?
Yeah. In other words, he did the act. You cannot deny it.
But notice one thing in the example you gave, right? At least you did not accuse me of killing this person purposely, right? In Peter Liang's case, he says that he fired purposely, on his own will.
Well, he fired purposely, but did he fire at that person purposely? In other words, you're driving your car, but that doesn't mean you intended to hit that person. You weren't aiming for that person. The same, I think, isn't
That's the distinction that's being made in this case. And, you know, again, I think it was the prosecutor's kind of duty to raise it. At the end of the day, whether it's given much credence or attention by the judge, we'll find out. But it was his job to kind of raise those issues as maybe things that should be considered. You know, often in justice, we consider scales, right? And we have to balance two things here. On one instance, you have a rookie officer who arguably was, you know, trying to serve the public and put his life at risk and was trying to do his job. But on the other end, you have somebody who died and who didn't deserve to die.
That's exactly what we're going to talk about.
It's a tragedy. So how do you draw the balance between justice when you consider those two aspects of the case?
I see. All right, very good. All right, correct me if wrong. I try to understand, my audience too, you might have the same question, right? That's why we're here to talk about it. Let me try, together with my audience, to understand the situation in a simple language, in a simple, like say, average Joe language. For example, I'm trying to sell my pen, which I know is worth of $500 only, right? Then in order to get $5, I want to go higher. I say, Scott, you want to get my pen for $20, like that. And then going back and forth, probably I sold it for $7. I'm still better off. Is that the case at prosecution? When you say you have to raise high, right?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, the prosecution has its duty to prosecute the cases, as Scott said. And they're going to fulfill that duty by going as hard as they can during the trial. After that, where the sentence is finally determined, it's kind of out of their hands. They've done their job. They've brought the case to fruition. The verdict has been found guilty. They've done their job. They can kind of stand back now at this point.
The role has changed.
The role has changed. Now they become almost the observer, the way that you and I are.
It's not the prosecution's cup of tea.
Right.
It's the judge's cup of tea.
Right, and I think now they're leaving it in the hands of the judge to finally determine what the.
No wonder I
particular sentence will
say
be.
it is the moment of learning. This is a moment of learning. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for pointing that out. It is a role shift, right? Instead of being the one of the center doing his job of prosecuting. Now I finish my job. It's your job now. Exactly. By watching, I say, okay, probably you want to take it easy on this guy, like that kind of thing, right? Okay, role change. All right, my dear audience, we're trying to understand the essence of law, our law and legal system. We take that as education, not a news. I believe justice would take care of Mr. Peter Liang. That's not our problem. In other words, even if you try, you will not even change your help anyway. So let's take a very short moment now. When we come back, let's take a different angle. So see how it stirs, right? So, and with me today is my good friend, Mr. Scott Wormuth, together with his partner, Justin Rodriguez. They are wonderful attorneys. They are my backbones. Hey. They are the mothers of crying babies every time I have one, like here, right? So let's take a short moment now. We will be right back, please. Hi, dear folks, ladies and gentlemen, dear fellow Americans, welcome back to the show. It's a discussion about Mr. Peter Liang's case. It's what we call the afterthoughts, not aftershock. We're talking about the afterthoughts about the case, so that will make it an opportunity of learning. We are learning from my good friend, Scott Wormuth, who I know 20 plus years, personally. And he's been servicing the Southern California area for more than 30 years. They have offices everywhere and billboards, they kind of are going around, So you see this handsome face, shiny face. When I say shiny, I mean shiny. I mean smiles. Well, seriously. And his partner, Justin Rodriguez, and he is the one that goes in and out of court every single day, except today.
Yes.
Now, question, please. Back to question. I have here the announcement of the district attorney's office stirred the emotion of both sides and the divisions in between, right? Now, it looks like a very, very hard ball to take. If you go left, you disturb the right. If you go right, disturb the left. So, number one, are we really at a polarized moment? All right. Two, is there any kind of a silver cut in it? And they say, when the police officer who killed Gardner was set free, Mr. Liang should be set free. When Mr. Liang is convicted or charged and convicted, the one who killed Gardner is to be charged and is to be convicted. So that only by then can we display the equality and the justice. Other than that, we are not talking about. Your comment, please.
I mean, just speaking for myself, I feel that people in general, the citizens of our country, really are looking for some consistency. Cases like this really cause a lot of controversy, I think, in a large part because, like you just mentioned, you're seeing a different decision from one day to the next. And as normal individuals, what do? We try to make sense of why did that happen in one case and maybe not in that case, or vice versa. I think that at the end of the day, people are looking for some accountability. And police officers, I often tell the jury when I'm in court, they're human beings too. And like all human beings, what do we all do? We make mistakes. And I think prosecutors and the laws need to treat police officers the same way they treat the average everyday citizen. Because until that time happens, there's not going to be consistency. You're not going to see accountability, and I think that's what people are really striving to.
Are we
receive.
saying that over the case of Garner, we made a mistake, so that we want to correct it with Peter Liang's case? So you know what I mean,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Because the former
Yeah.
incident was not charged. The officer, the responsible officer, was not charged. A walkout frame. So that a mistake. That was a mistake. We recognize. We're sorry for that. But done is done. But done is done, right?
Well, as Justin
let's do
has
it.
pointed
Could
out,
that be that thing?
you know, sometimes decisions are not made in a vacuum, right? So what's happening
right.
out in the community does affect what the prosecutor does. What's interesting to me, okay, the question is, why is there no consistency? Why is it that you don't always see police officers charged in these cases? And you know, it's a great question. What happens so often when police are charged is that the jury does not find a way to convict them. So the incidents of officers being charged is very rare.
That's true.
It's also very rare that when they're charged, they are actually convicted. The jury tends
to be
favor,
on their side.
exactly
To favor,
which sort of goes against, you know, like what you would think this whole community outrage is. Why are we not charging them? But they charge them and they're not convicted.
And
you know?
now, when
That's a
they,
good point.
when at the moment of Peter Liang's conviction, there were celebrations among folks of a certain community, right? And now, with the recommendation, sentencing recommendation, well, there is a protest of that kind of the same community. So you see protests either way.
Right.
Protest on the Asian American side, protest of the black community side. So either way, I'm talking about, is there anything wrong, or the case is wrong, or the way the case is handled is wrong?
I think we're looking for consistency. I think
We are, yes.
And at the end of the day, if this had been switched the other way around, where Mr. Gurley had shot a gun and it accidentally bounced off a wall and killed the officer.
Oh, by the way, if you check details about Mr. Garner, Mr. Garner's case, you will find more civilities, rather than just shooting a bullet that bounced from the wall.
Right. I mean, there was just intentional acts. I think that case is a travesty, a miscarriage of justice. But
Guy says, I can't breathe, I can't breathe,
Yeah.
I can't. And the officer squeezes the arm till he dies.
and I mean, for loose cigarettes, for selling loose cigarettes.
Yeah,
at
and
some
then
point
if
we
you
have to-
compare Peter Liang's case, whose bullet bounces from the wall, kills somebody, and a deadlock
Right.
like this, while the guy screaming and say, I can't breathe, like that guy. So how do you, where's the justice?
And
that is why people are disturbed.
Right, and I think you get down to the heart of it, Jack, that we're trying to reconcile those two different cases. We're trying to reconcile these two different outcomes, and I don't think you can actually do it. I think there's just basically inconsistency all the way across the board. As Scott just pointed out, it's rare where police officers are even charged, let alone actually convicted. I think the public is looking for accountability. We're looking for fairness in our laws. I think police officers, I respect what they do, but they need to be held accountable just
You know,
like everyone
Scott, I
else.
really like his statement of saying correcting mistakes. Right? If that has been the fact, or that is the fact, say, I'm sorry, we're only human, even the system kind of performed by human, right? Which could not prevent a mistake. Do you think in law systems we consider that as a reason, as a kind of
we
legitimate,
yeah, we do
legitimate
consider
reason?
mistake. Yeah, we do. I mean, we consider it in criminal and civil law, both.
I see.
Where mistake as to in your little your pen scenario, you want to sell it. You say it's a $20 pen. That's what you're asking
Yeah.
for. You know it's worth $5.
$5.
You know. Well, but I could make a mistake. I may think that it's all gold, you know, and so then I make an offer. And in certain cases, contracts can be reversed because of mistake.
And buying my next pen, you say, okay, I give you only $3.
Yeah, right.
So
if
Peter
you-
Liang, in this case, is the
Yeah.
next pen, right?
Yeah. Well, if you had told me this pen was used by the President of the United States to
Yes.
sign the civil rights law or something, and you knew that wasn't true, you know, then you're misrepresenting, then you're doing something wrongful. So anyway, mistake is something that we consider criminally. We do, don't
Absolutely.
we? And civilly.
It goes to your state of mind when a person commits a crime. Many crimes require that the person intend to make that particular result. So if there's an argument to be made that it was a mistake, that it was not done with that intent, then that's a very credible
right.
defense.
I like once again, I say I like your statement about a mistake and your comment about mistakes. We're only human, right? I do mistake, I make mistake too. But the thing is that how to correct it. You want to see the right moment to correct it. And then you're talking about who to pick up, right? So your comment about scapegoat, please. And I have lots of people saying that these people are just picking the low-hanging fruits. So between scapegoat and the low-hanging fruits, any comment from you, please? Using
I
this
think
state,
but
mistake
the other thing Justin said, we also want to see people held accountable. And that's where I think there's the great inconsistency. We're not holding people accountable, police officers accountable. And so this, you talk about Garner and Gurley here.
Yes.
Both were in New York City, right?
Yes.
Why such a
4 months
why
apart.
such a difference? Why such a difference?
Yes, you're right.
Something stinks, right?
Yeah, and I think a problem with the analysis with these types of cases also is it depends on where your perspective is. Where are you looking at this case from? If you're looking at this case as a police officer, well, obviously you may have certain thoughts and feelings. If you're looking at this case as an observer, you may have feelings. If you're looking at this case as a family member of the victim, I guarantee you're going to be looking at this case differently. And I think at the end of the day, we have to really consider that if you are an actual family member of this man.
But trying with an easy guy, trying with a lower hanging fruit is a better way to correct mistakes. Am I right?
Well, I think mistakes can't be corrected unless you admit there was a mistake. And at the end of the day, there needs to be accountability so that these mistakes can ultimately be corrected. If no police officer is being found accountable for these types of terrible acts, then how are they ever going to learn from it? How are they ever going to fear making that kind of mistake again? If they feel they can act with impunity, if they feel they can shoot someone and not do some serious jail time, how are they ever going to approach a situation and correct the way they approach that particular situation?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And let's take a very short moment now. With me today are my wonderful friend, Mr. Justin Rodriguez, and my good friend for more than 20 years, Scott Wormuth. And we are talking about the afterthoughts of the Peter Liang's case. And when we come back after this little break, we will check about the other side of the story about the jury members. So stay with us, please. Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to the show. A discussion, as a matter of fact, of one case, dissecting one case to learn. Put it that way. We're using Peter Liang's case. Of course, this is still a hot case because sentencing is still pending till April 14th. So we're talking layer by layer. We're peeling off layer by layer the onion, see what's inside the onion, so that we want to learn, understand our system better, our justice better. To mentor this whole class are my wonderful friend, Scott Wormuth. Oh, I give the credit not only to you, I have to give it to your law firm, about more than 30 attorneys.
That's right.
The other day I saw a big picture.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, good.
It's a team.
All right, good.
It's a
So
team.
that's the law office of Scott Wormuth?
Yes.
What is it called? You call it
That's,
officially?
that's what it is.
I
Correct.
see.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. And I know Scott for more than 20 years. He's an attorney at law, and he is a very kind of a grassrooted, taking care of all those, grassroots problems.
All
right?
kinds of
All
yes,
kinds of.
day-to-day problems in
What
the
if
life of a person.
What if I need money?
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
a big
go
problem.
see
Yeah,
Justin.
yeah.
I go to
That's the wrong
Justin.
place,
Justin
Jack,
does
trust
it.
me.
All right, very good. And Justin Rodriguez, he is the criminal defense attorney, because of the fact that the Peter Liang's case tends to be the criminal area. We had Justin, and someday when I have a marriage related or whatever, you will bring somebody else, right?
Of course.
Okay,
yes,
very good.
right.
So back to Justin and you, Tuli, please. Now, according to the Daily News, right, an anonymous 62-year-old juror member who said that his own father had to serve over 7 years in prison when he accidentally shot one of his friends. The same way, accidentally. So that's why he say Peter Liang should not be taken easy. Any kind of his own words is that that Peter Liang shouldn't be getting any special treatment just because he is a police officer. So now, my question is that to be selected among the juror members, the juries, right? So this kind of person has the premeditated mind or pre-minded.
Yeah.
Is he qualified?
Boy, it certainly raises a big question in my mind, and you wonder how did the defense, what did they know about this juror? Did they ask?
Yeah, I mean,
You know.
it's the process is voir dire, and that's a process where both the prosecutor and the defense attorney get to ask a whole series of questions to try to vet and screen which jurors come in. At the end of the day, it's really up to the prosecutor and the defense
And
to
that
ask
part
those
I want you to
questions.
stretch a little bit because that's okay. We go to court all the time, right? It is very seldom people go to the very final to jury court.
That's correct.
And it is not everybody got a chance to see what happens at the jury court, especially in the juror member selections. I was lucky enough. I was with in court saw that happen. So why don't you describe it in a way, starting from say, hey, here are the 12 members, right? Here comes the defense attorney. Here comes the plaintiff attorney, and how they select, how they dismiss.
Well, to put it in plain terms, both the defense and the prosecutor are allowed to remove a juror from the panel that will ultimately be selected based on how they answered questions. All they need is essentially a reasonable explanation of why they would remove a juror. They can't, for instance, discriminate just outright. But it is possible, for example, for a defense attorney to commonly ask, well, is any member on the jury panel related to a police officer?
Yeah.
That would be a first question you
That's
ask in
his
this
point. That's his
particular
point,
case.
right?
Exactly.
He was trying to say that it is obviously some question among the top of the list that should be asked.
Right.
Right.
So now it points to me that there are two options. Number one, the guy lied. The juror member lied, right? And number two, the defense failed to do the right job. So which way is more likely, or sounds more likely in this case, please?
It really depends. I mean, I hate to sound so down the middle, but we don't know if that particular individual lied. And to be honest, if I was a defense attorney on this particular case, I would want someone like that on my jury panel because that particular individual would tend to show more leniency or more understanding. If he had his own father convicted for accidentally shooting someone, I would want that guy on my jury because he tends to understand more the nature of an accident and would likely be more lenient.
Now he's asking for fair treatment. Say, my father
Yeah,
stayed for
exactly.
7
So you
years.
never
This
know.
guy,
You
let's do
never
7
know.
years, something like
Yeah,
that.
at the end of
right?
the day, you never know what's going on in a
That's
juror's
why,
mind.
and then Scott pointed out, if any of the member or the family of any of the members had a police officer background, better be dismissed. Am I right?
Well, you're not allowed to just take everybody off. You have a limited amount of times you can remove a juror from the
Oh
panel.
yeah, and back to
So,
education. How many among the 12 can you dismiss? Can you remove?
It varies state to state.
In California?
It's about 3 to 4, I think.
3
and
to
it-
4.
Yes, and
I see.
it
When you
really-
dismiss, they want to send some new members to make it up?
And that's the thing. You don't know if the new people that come in are worse for your point of view than the ones that you
I
removed.
see,
So it's really a gamble. There's some consulting firms that base their services solely on jury selection.
And how many times can I, if I'm an attorney, remove or dismiss? By number, you're talking about 2 or 3, right? And then, well, next court, they make up the 12, give me 3 more, and then can I still dismiss?
No, you can't. I mean, you run out of a certain amount depending on the state and its particular laws, but the judge will advise the attorneys on how many they can remove. And a judge can also remove a juror depending on if they find just cause. So it's a gamble. And yeah.
And Scott, when one of the members, just say, one of the members lied among one of the 12, lied, right? His credibility is kind of destroyed. So
I
could that
don't
be,
know if that constitutes misconduct.
Yeah, I'm talking about a mistrial.
Right, yeah.
Could that be a mistrial or misconduct?
So juror misconduct, I think, would have to do with deliberations, if I'm not mistaken.
They would have a
but-
particular hearing on that issue alone, and the attorneys would argue both ways. I mean, the prosecutor may be arguing to keep that person on.
The same prosecutor?
It'll be the same prosecutor, the people,
And
the
same
attorneys who are
defense.
exactly who assigned to that particular, because that act or that alleged misconduct can arguably not have an effect on the ruling or their
What is
judgment
the difference
of the case.
between misconduct and a mistrial?
Well, misconduct is what leads to a mistrial.
I
Yeah,
see,
misconduct is the actual act of the particular juror. Maybe one of the things they're not supposed to do is go outside the courtroom and talk to people about the case. That would be considered juror misconduct. So that's
So just because there's misconduct doesn't mean there's a mistrial.
Oh, I see, I see.
And a mistrial could also be caused by things other than juror misconduct. A mistrial could
Such as?
result from attorney action. So
prosecutor
attorney doing-
misconduct.
Yeah,
The
you
way
could
a
have-
juror can do things that are not proper, prosecutors can do something not proper, and that can throw away a
So
case
you
as well.
you may say something as an attorney in court that you're not allowed to say, that would be prejudicial, perhaps.
I see.
This would be a kind
Such
of
as discrimination or stuff like that.
yeah, or maybe there are certain orders in place where the attorneys are not allowed to bring up a certain subject. You're not allowed to talk about it.
I see.
And then they mention it against court order. So the judge could find, well, this has led to a mistrial because it is so sufficicially harmful, right?
Yeah.
Okay, in
Exactly
this
correct.
case, if the special hearing you mentioned to keep the member whose father was this 7-year in jail police officer, and there are 2 ways of going. One way to still keep it, and then you still kind of are in protection of the previous conviction. So if they decide to say, hey, this guy was not qualified, let's dismiss him, and then the conclusion, the conviction still stand? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how the state of New York would handle it. It really comes down to whether that particular lie or that misconduct would be grounds for mistrial. You have to understand that judges are very reluctant to throw away all the efforts of all this trial, the jury selection, however long the trial took, all the arguments that were made, all the resources that were poured into this particular case, and throw it all away because of one act that particular juror committed. So they take it very seriously, and I think it would have to rise to the level of seriousness where a judge would decide that
And
way.
the burden right now would be on the defense to bring a motion
That's correct,
with the
yeah.
court, and there would be a time limit for doing that. I'm not sure, when was the conviction? Do you remember?
February something. Yes, February.
So there would be a time limit for them to bring a motion alleging.
And this guy
juror
just exposed it 2 days ago.
So then maybe it runs from that date.
And there would also, it could be done through the appeals process as well, that even after everything is said and done, that might be grounds for an appeal.
The appeal
and then that goes to the appeals
Mr.
court.
Liang extra tragedy, right? You were just stretching the pan into even longer time, which is, well, I don't think likely Peter Liang will do that. If the defense, suppose you're a defense attorney and you're a defense attorney, you will choose to fight right away. Here's an opportunity. Am I right?
It is, but again, it wouldn't waive that right to appeal the case at within the correct time frame, within the statute of limitations, to also appeal the case on some
Man,
grounds.
how strongly I wish you guys were a judge.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to be a judge.
Yeah, that would be a tough job.
I really wish that you guys would be a judge. Suppose if you were the judge, would you consider that?
Consider this issue.
A mistrial.
Now remember, a judge very rarely can on their own initiative institute something. So there would have to be, the way a judge rules is he or she will get briefings from both sides. And then those briefings would be reviewed, would be researched, and the judge would then make a decision. So the judge cannot, if I may be mistaken in criminal law, but I don't think the judge has any role in this right now, unless it is formally brought to his or her jurisdiction by a motion from.
In other words, the argument hasn't started yet.
Not yet. I mean, I think it would have to be extremely serious actions to constitute.
But
where
it's
judge
going to
would
be
have
a
to bring it up.
very, very, very interesting argument.
There's an old saying that I would rather argue a case than decide one. And so I think judges have a very difficult role. They have a very difficult job.
I can never go to law school. My mind does not function in the law way. All right,
You're doing okay, Jack.
Anyway, okay. All right, I'm okay, right? All right, thank you for saying okay. My dear audience, we're running out of time, so we would like to thank you very much for watching, and we promise that we'll keep an eye on the case for only the purpose of learning, trying to get into it to understand our system. Today, for example, I personally learned a lot. I believe the same happened to you. The credit goes to the law firm of Scott Wormuth, and Scott Wormuth is here, a good friend for more than 20 years personally with me, servicing Southern California for more than 30 years, and his partner, Justin Rodriguez, a defense attorney. As you can see, now he's smiling, but he does bite. He bites a lot. He bites a lot in court. He goes back and forth.
He gets
on a
great
day-to-day
results for our clients, I can tell
yeah?
you that.
You're
Like
right.
a pit bull, Jack. Like
Yes.
a pit bull.
Very good. All right, like a pit bull, right?
Yes.
Like, I can't say you look like one. You sound like one.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough.
You sound
Yeah.
like one. All right. All right. Thank you very much, my dear audience, and thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
We'll see you next time.